figured in his fist. "There's no need to be frightened," he said reassuringly. "I don't want to hurt you. I want to make you rich. I'll give you $2 million for the Book of the Learned. Won't you let me in, so we can talk? I'll give you 60 seconds to get off my property. Be reasonable, Mrs. Weaver. $2 million is a lot of money. It's better than anyone else will pay for what's left of that damn Druid book. 30 seconds. At least take my business card." The only answer he heard was the unmistakable slide of metal over metal as she readied the shotgun. He gauged the thickness of the stone and walls, the sun-hardened thick wood of the door, and the surprising strength of the prey. He would need armor-piercing bullets for the cabin, for her, too. That was one tough old bitch. With a vicious curse, he turned, got in his car, and drove away from the very thing he wanted enough to kill for. The wind came up after sunset. The kerosene lamp inside the cabin threw odd living shadows over the windows and walls. An old loom waited in one corner, with an unfinished weaving partially filling the frame. She wore around her neck the long scarf that was as old as the loom itself. Numbly, she sat in front of a fire, staring at the sinuous flames without really seeing. All she saw were the pieces of thin, blank cardboard that she fed, one by one, into the fire. He had promised to send her the stolen pages of the Book of the Learned. He had betrayed her again, promises made and broken. He had sent modern paper, not ancient vellum. There were no pages of lean, somehow dangerous writing, an old language long vanished. It didn't matter that she couldn't read the words themselves. It was enough that she kept the book safe and passed it on to the next Serena. Family tradition held that the Book of the Learned was the soul of a man written on vellum with ink made of oak gall and iron. A powerful, proud, mysterious, and deadly man. Erik the Learned. Erik, who had learned too late, but what he had learned and what he had lost were themselves forgotten when the keepers of the Book of the Learned no longer could read the ancient language. A sound from outside jerked her from her bitter reverie. She turned in time to see one window burst inward. A bottle hit the stone floor and exploded, showering the small room with burning gasoline. Another bottle followed, then another and another and another in a merciless rain that burned even the air. Her only regret was that she wouldn't be alive to see his face when he discovered that she had outwitted him again. She had already passed the Book of the Learned to its next keeper. The law offices of Morton Hingham were left over from a more leisurely, luxuriant time. Inside the reception area, creamy walls and rich green plants soothed the eye. Solid wood furniture gleamed with polish. The secretary receptionist spoke. "Miss Charters, Mr. Hingham will see you now." "Thank you," Serena said, in a husky voice. The older woman nodded, ushered the client into Morton Hingham's office, and shut the door behind her. "Sorry to keep you waiting, Miss Charters," Hingham said, clearing his throat. "There's a particularly difficult custody case that—" He cleared his throat again. "I understand," Serena said. A polite lie. "It doesn't matter. The truth." She'd been quite willing to look out the windows at the mountains that had ringed her childhood and formed her adult dreams. "I take it that the state of California is ready to close the books on my grandmother's murder." "The books will never be closed until her killer is found. But yes, I'm empowered as her executor to turn over to you all that remains of Lisbeth Charter's, your grandmother's, worldly goods." His use of her grandmother's real name, Lisbeth Charters, told Serena that her grandmother had trusted this man, as she had trusted only one other person on earth, her granddaughter. "I see," Serena said neutrally. "Does the fact that I'm finally receiving my so-called inheritance mean that I'm no longer a suspect in Gamam's murder?" Hingham cleared his throat again. "You were never under serious suspicion, Miss Charters. As the detective explained, it was simply routine to ascertain your whereabouts the night your grandmother died, especially as you were her sole surviving heir." "The detective explained. It didn't change how I felt." "Yes, well, it must have been very difficult for you." "It still is. Even though Gamam and I weren't close, she was the only family I had." Abruptly, her hand moved in an impatient gesture. "Let's get this over with. I have work to do." Hingham's chair creaked sharply as he sat. "Your inheritance is what remains of the house and 5 acres it sits on. There are no liens or outstanding debts." He handed a plat map and deed across the desk to Serena. "The taxes have been paid through last year. I filed for a reappraisal due to the fire." He handed over more papers. "There are no utility bills because there are no utilities. Lisbeth, Mrs. Charters, was self-sufficient to the last." If Hingham thought it strange that his client was Ellis Weaver on the publicly filed deed and Lisbeth Charters in her private life, he said nothing. So long as a person didn't take a second name in order to conceal illegal actions, multiple names were quite legal. Hingham cleared his throat, rearranged his papers, chose one, and handed it across the desk. "She has one bank account," he said, "in Bern, Switzerland. A numbered account. That's why there isn't any paper, just the account number written in Lisbeth's hand. Even as her executor, I had a devil of a time getting any information about the account out of the Swiss." "Are you certain it was Gamam's account?" "Quite," Hingham said. "From the number, I would guess that the account is rather old. There's enough in the account to cover any final expenses associated with her death. As you know, she wanted to be cremated and her ashes scattered over her land." Rage and tears fought for control of Serena's voice. Rage won. How clever of her murderer to carry out her last wishes. Hingham winced at the slicing edge in her voice. At that moment, he decided to spare his client the whole truth. He had given Lisbeth's charred remains a formal cremation as soon as the sheriff's office permitted it. Then he had driven out into the desert wilderness Lisbeth had called home and had given her ashes to the wind. "Why would my grandmother have a numbered Swiss bank account?" "The usual reasons, I assume." "But she wasn't involved in anything criminal." Hingham smiled. "There are many legitimate reasons for having anonymous bank accounts. Your grandmother was an extremely, private woman, and the account is quite old. Well before your time, I would guess. It has nothing to do with you, except if you choose to close the account, I could do that for you." Serena looked at the piece of paper in her hand. There was $12,749.81 U.S. in the foreign bank. "I'll take care of it myself." The lawyer's mouth flattened. He couldn't count the times Lisbeth had said the same thing to him. No matter how hard he had tried, she'd refused all but the most neutral legal necessities from him. It hadn't been anything personal. She disliked and distrusted all men equally. "As you wish." He cleared his throat roughly and handed over a small envelope with the logo of his office as a return address. "This is a key to her safe deposit box." "In Switzerland?" He smiled. "No, Palm Springs. In my position as executor, I—" "Opened it?" Serena's voice was cool. "She requested it when she amended her will. I'm an officer of the court, Miss Charters. I ascertained that there was nothing of interest to the state in the safe deposit box." "Why would the state care if Gamam left me a few mementos?" "If the, mementos were sufficiently valuable, there would be the matter of death taxes to pay." "Of course. How could I forget?" Hingham unlocked the belly drawer of his desk and gently removed a worn leather portfolio that all but filled the wide drawer. There were several items in the safe deposit box. He put a fresh magazine-size envelope next to the portfolio. "And this was found in the ruins, near your grandmother's loom." "What is it?" "Cloth. She was lying on it, apparently." "Apparently?" Serena asked. "I don't understand." Hingham sighed. "There was little left but stone walls and the stone chimney. It's a miracle that this survived the fire at all." Frowning, Serena took the envelope, opened it, and drew out the cloth. Perhaps a foot wide, more than a yard long, the fabric smelled of smoke, yet wasn't burned. The threads were supple, gleaming, every color and no color, opaque and transparent, whispering to her in an ancient tongue, luring her deeper and deeper as the unfinished pattern teased her with a feeling of absolute rightness. "This is mine. I wove it." Yet she had never seen the cloth before in her life. "Miss Charters, are you all right?" Hingham asked.